Good evening. It's 8 o'clock in Yerushalayim, although Hanukkah, as you point out on chat, is over here in Israel. It's still Hanukkah in other time zones. For those of you who still have Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. We're talking about fun. What the great rabbis have to say about fun, and we've seen tons of sources up till this point which acknowledge, which embrace the value of fun, the value of entertainment, the value of diverting oneself from the enterprise of Torah and mitzvahs, as long as the reason you are engaging in fun is so that you will be able to later return to the enterprise of Torah and mitzvahs with greater energy. There are people, not many, there's a small handful of people out there who are able to devote themselves all day, every day, to the enterprise of Torah and mitzvahs. That's a small number of people. Most of us require a little bit of diversion, a little bit of fun, a little bit of entertainment in order to be able to return to the engagement in Torah and mitzvahs with greater energy. And we've seen tons of sources supporting that idea. What I want to turn to tonight is the question specifically of games. Now, of course, when the great rabbis talk about games, there are certain specific games which they mention, namely those games which were very common in antiquity and the Middle Ages. But you can substitute any other game that interests you for the game that they're talking about. It's not the specific games which are important; it's the idea of playing games. They don't talk about bridge or poker, card games. But if that's what interests you, just substitute bridge and poker for the games they do talk about, and you'll understand their approach. Let's see some of the principal sources here. Let's make this very nice on the screen. Here we go. The first game that they talk about, the first game that the great poskim talk about, is of course chess. Let's see if I can get this on the screen here correctly. Discussion of chess. I think this is it. Yeah. The quotation on the screen is from a midrash. It's from a late midrash, and I just bring it by way of introduction, not because it's halachically important, but because it does introduce the subject for us tonight. What it says in the midrash, and you have the source on the screen as usual. What it says in the midrash is Od b'chochma achat chaga Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech was very wise. His wisdom, of course, had to do primarily with Torah, but his wisdom was not limited to Torah. He knew astronomy, and he knew all the sciences that were known in those days, and he had one more chochma, one more element to his wisdom beyond Torah, beyond secular knowledge from those days. And this extra knowledge that he had was a source of great pleasure for him. Everyone knows, the Midrash says, Ki hu himtzi et mischak kashach. Everyone knows that Shlomo HaMelech was the creator of the game chess. V'yavehu, and he loved it. Shlomo HaMelech loved to play chess. Now, I have not the vaguest idea whether or not this midrash is historically accurate. I do not bring this midrash. I do not quote this midrash in order to prove a historical point that Shlomo HaMelech actually was the inventor of chess. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I really don't know who invented chess. The history books also don't know exactly. The originator of chess is lost in antiquity. It's such an ancient game. But the Midrash does tell us that from the Midrashic point of view, from the rabbinic point of view, Shlomo HaMelech is being praised for giving us chess. The game is being praised as something good, and that's an important point. The rabbis in the Midrash are praising the game, praising Shlomo HaMelech for having invented it, praising the game. So we see there's definitely a positive attitude to the game of chess. Okay, that's midrash, not necessarily history. Maybe it is history, but let's see what the poskim have to say about this. First, we have the Rambam. Mihaya Gadol. Rambam was surely, if not the greatest, on anyone's short list of all-time great rabbinic authorities, surely from the Middle Ages, from the period of the Rishonim. These are the words of the Rambam. I see I was a little bit negligent here. Usually I give the sources in very precise detail. Here I just wrote Gimel Gimel, which is a little bit sloppy. I should have said Perek Gimel, Mishnah Gimel, Chapter 3, Mishnah 3. The reference is a little bit sloppy, but if you want to look up the source, I'm sure you'll be able to find it. This is what Rambam said. Rambam said, "V'amar hamsachek b'kuvia." The Mishnah. This is Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah. The Mishnah talks about misachek b'kuvia. The Mishnah talks about people who play with the kubia, the cube. Hamisachek b'kubia, the ones who play with the cube, that's what we call dice. The Mishnah has bad words about people who play dice. And of course today, games of chance with dice are still very popular. The Mishnah has very bad words about that. The Mishnah says that someone who plays dice is pasul le'edut, disqualified from giving testimony in a rabbinic court. There's something fundamentally untrustworthy about someone who plays dice. The Mishnah doesn't like this game, and indeed, severe penalties attached to the people who play this game. They are disqualified from giving testimony in court. They are fundamentally untrustworthy. And of course, this has vast ramifications in other areas of Torah as well. We have to ask whether or not they're trustworthy, kashrus, and everything else. Let's see how the Rambam addresses this issue. What is this game that we call dice, and the Mishnah calls misachek b'kubiyah? Hu hamishchak b'nard. Rambam translates it into Arabic for us. Nard. Now, nard. I apologize. Something's gone horribly wrong with the Arabic on my screen. I guess for some reason our software program is prejudiced against the Arabic language. I apologize for the letters getting reversed somehow on the screen. The nard is the Arabic word for dice, and he also talks about shatrang. Shatrang is the Arabic word, originally a Persian word, but came into Arabic as well. The Arabic word for chess. When the Mishnah denigrates playing games, the examples of bad games given to us by the Rambam are dice and chess. Those are bad ones. Or any similar game, b'tenai sheyishalem kesef mi sheya'aseh kach o lo ya'aseh kach. These games are bad if there's money involved. If someone is going to win money and someone's going to lose money, you're gambling for money. If the chess game or the dice game is for money, the Rambam says that's bad. You're going to win or lose according to the rules of that game. That's bad. Playing games for money is bad. Well, let's complete the text of the Rambam, and then we'll have some understanding of what's going on here. What's bad about playing games for money, gambling in simple English? What's wrong with gambling for money? Someone who gambles is engaged in an enterprise which has no use. Gambling is useless in this world. Liyishuv ha'olam, gambling contributes nothing to the interests of civilization. And one of the fundamental values of Torah one of the fundamental values of Torah is that we must be engaged in promoting the interests of civilization. That's what we are here on earth for. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us, in order to further the interests of civilization, to make the earth a better place to live on. And people who make their livelihood through gambling, whether it's the individual gambler or the owner of the casino, someone who makes his livelihood or her livelihood through gambling is contributing nothing to the interests of civilization, is doing nothing to improve life on this world. A plumber is doing a lot to improve the quality of life on this planet. Plumbers are definitely active in the interests of civilization. The same could be said of teachers and electricians and physicians and accountants and just about everyone else, but not gamblers. Gamblers contribute nothing beneficial to mankind. Musicians contribute a lot. Poets contribute a lot, but not gamblers. Yesodhu b'Toratenu. It's a fundamental principle of our Torah. She'ein ra'ui la'adam lahashik atzmo. It's a fundamental principle of the Torah that no one should occupy himself, ba'olam hazeh, in this world, ela be'achad mishnei dvarim. The fundamental principle of Torah is that everyone in this world should be engaged in one of two activities. One valid activity which the Torah embraces and encourages is chokhmah, increasing your wisdom, both secular and religious. If you're improving your mind, whether it's in the religious realm or the secular realm, that's beneficial, and that the Torah says is good. Or the second activity, which is a valid activity, is an activity which is yo'il, which benefits the existence of the world. And that's our plumbers and our tailors and our poets and our musicians. Kagon, for example, omanutu mishar, someone who engages in art, whether it's music or any other kind of art, someone who engages in mishar, trade, a tradesman, that is a person who is contributing to the benefit of mankind. Of course, of the two areas of legitimate activity for humans, Chokhmah, the first activity, is better for those who are intellectual. It's, of course, better to spend more time and more energy on the intellectual development than the physical improvement of the world by being a tailor or a carpenter. Both are good, but given a choice, the intellectual is a little bit better. That's what it says in Pirkei Avot, Have ma'at esek v'asok b'Torah, do less engagement in this world and more engagement in Torah. Well, everyone's going to have to judge for himself. Everyone's going to have to judge for herself how they're going to divide their time and energies between these two valid endeavors, Chokhmah, Torah on the one hand, and improving the world we live in on the other hand. And, some people will be more on one, more on the other, given a choice. Not everyone has a choice. Not everyone is very intellectual, right? But given a choice, it's better to devote more time and energy to the intellectual sphere. Well, according to the Rambam, the problem with the games that the Mishnah frowns upon, the problem with the bad games is that they are useless. They have no benefit as far as civilization is concerned. They are contributing nothing. Now, we're talking here about people who make their livelihood through gambling. Two friends who get together, a group of friends who get together and play chess, poker, bridge, I don't care what the game is, a bunch of friends who get together and enjoy an evening playing bridge together. And it's for money. It's for money. They're going to count up They're going to count up the vote. They're going to count up the points, and there's going to be some money exchanged at the end. That's okay. That's just a friendly game. They're not making their livelihood out of gambling. The person that the Mishnah frowns upon is the professional gambler, the one whose livelihood depends entirely upon dice, the one whose livelihood depends entirely upon chess or whatever the game is. That's a person who is not contributing to the improvement of civilization, is not improving the world we live in. Someone who is a plumber, someone who is a tailor, someone who is a laboratory assistant in a medical lab, it doesn't matter what you're doing, someone whose livelihood is improving the world we live in, and on the side wants to have a friendly game, whether it's dice or whatever it is, that's okay. That's okay. The person we don't like is the professional gambler, and that, of course, frowns not only upon the person who makes his or her livelihood at the racetrack because he or she is a gambler, that frowns equally on the people who operate, who run and own the racetrack, who run or operate the casino where the people are gambling. These institutions contribute nothing to the improvement of mankind. That's the Rambam's point of view. Now it follows, therefore, that a friendly game, in order to divert oneself from the tensions of the day, in order to be able to return the next day or to return later in the day with greater energy, either to the occupation of Torah or to the occupation of improving life in this world, well, the occasional time out for relaxing, that's fine, even if money is going to change hands when you win or lose the round of bridge or tennis or whatever it is. That's okay, as long as it's not your livelihood. As long as you have a legitimate livelihood, legitimate means contributing to the benefit of mankind. But that's the Rambam's opinion. Let's go on. The Rambam was, of course, Sephardi, originally from Spain. He wrote his commentary on the Mishnah while he was en route fleeing from Spain. There was anti-Jewish persecution in Spain. Back in the days of the Rambam, he fled the Muslims in Spain and made his way to Egypt, which, although also Muslim, was more tolerant in those days. And he wrote this commentary on the Mishnah when he was a fairly young man, fleeing Spain en route to Egypt. That represents the Sephardic view. Let's look at what the great authorities on the Ashkenaz side of the divide have to say on this issue. We have the Safer Hasidim, written, not exactly written by Rav Yehuda HaChassid, 13th century Germany. It wasn't exactly written by him, it was written by his Talmidim, by his disciples. But the book represents the thinking of Rav Yehuda HaChassid, the founder of the movement called Hasidei Ashkenaz, one of the Torah greats from the period of the Tosafot, Ashkenaz side of Europe. Let's see what he says on this issue. Echad sichek im chaveiro b'kubiya v'hirviach. Someone played dice with his friends and won. That's the story. Someone played dice with his friends and won. Otoshi hipsid, the person who lost, if there's a winner, there's also a loser. The person who actually, it's not obvious that when there's a winner, there's a loser, is there? I know that I recently bought a cell phone for one of my children, and it was a cheap cell phone. In Israel, you can get very cheap cell phones, which were apparently intended for marketing somewhere, I don't know exactly where in the world, but they come very cheap. And, these cell phones come with built-in games. And one of the games on this particular cell phone had all the instructions in Swahili. Now, the truth is, Swahili is not one of my languages. I don't know Swahili, but at least I know how to use Google Translate. And I use Google Translate to figure out the rules of the game on the cell phone. And I was mildly surprised to discover that in Swahili, there's apparently no word for the loser of a game. Two people play a game against each other. One of them ends up being the big winner. The other ends up being the small winner. It's a big winner and a small winner. Swahili doesn't have winners and losers. It only has big winners and small winners. It's not obvious that there has to be a winner and a loser in every game, but that's what the Safer Hasidim is talking about. Two guys played dice. One won money, the other lost money. The guy who lost the money, Ganav etzel oto shehirviach hateva shel eitz shesochakim bahem. The guy who lost was apparently very upset, and the guy who lost stole the box containing the dice. You know, that's a sore loser, right? The guy lost in the game of dice, and before stomping out of the room and slamming the door, he stole the box containing the dice. Now remember, back in those days, the box and the dice were expensive items. Back in those days, getting a carpenter to prepare for you dice had to be made very precisely. They're still made very precisely, but back in those days, getting precisely made dice, which are good to play with, that was an expensive item back in those days. And the loser stole the dice. Kagon Shakak Shakaki v'domehem. And this idea applies not only to dice, but also to the tzahaka, to the game, what modern Israeli Hebrew calls the mishak, the game of shakaki. What is shakaki? Shakaki is clearly the medieval word for chess. As you can see, the word for chess in European languages is very similar to this very day. And it doesn't matter what the game is, whether it was dice or cards or chess, if there's a financial winner and a financial loser, and the loser is really upset, and the loser is a poor loser, and he steals something from the winner, the thief sold the stolen item and made back the money that he lost to the winner of the game. Okay, two gamblers, winner and loser. The loser steals some property from the winner, sells the property in order to make back his losses in gambling. That's what happens. What does Safer Hasidim have to say about this? Sha'al im yesh lo avon. The question is, the loser who became the thief and sold the stolen property, does he have an avon? Is that called a sin? Is he guilty of a sin because he's a thief and sold the stolen property? Is he a thief? Amalei, Rav Yehuda HaChassid answered by saying, someone who steals from a thief has the taste of thievery. You steal from a thief, that's a kind of theft, and you taste the thievery that you are doing. V'od yeush asita kishehirviach mimcha. And one should have despaired of ever getting the money back. The gambler should have despaired of getting the money back. V'lo yacholta laharviach ela derech geneva. The loser thought the only way, the loser despaired of playing another round of dice. The loser despaired of playing another round of bridge or whatever the game is that he lost. And he said, the only way I'm going to get my money back is by stealing it back. Aval, however, hagozel achar hagazlan, someone who steals from a thief, Ovid inish dino nafshe, has just done an act of justice for himself. A thief steals from you. You steal back what the thief stole from you. You've just executed an act of justice. Stealing back what a thief stole from you is not a sin. That's an act of justice. And therefore, since the game should not have been played in the first place, since it was wrong to gamble for money in the first place, the winner has the status of a sinner. The winner should not have taken the money. And since the winner has the status of a sinner, stealing back that money is okay according to the Safer Hasidim. The game was a prohibited game. Therefore, the winnings were prohibited winnings, and therefore the winner should not have been holding that cash. And the fact that the loser stole back the value of what he lost is not called a sin. Well, you see, it's not only the Rambam on the Sfaradi side, it's also the Sefer Hasidim on the Ashkenaz side who holds that gambling for money is fundamentally wrong, so wrong that the person who wins is considered a sinner. And therefore, although this should, of course, be adjudicated in a proper Bezdin, of course, one should proceed in an orderly way in order to resolve a case like this, as someone who steals back from the thief what was originally stolen is okay as far as the halacha is concerned. Now this is a very powerful indictment, a very powerful indictment of gambling, both throughout the Middle Ages, on both sides of medieval Europe, that gambling for livelihood is wrong, wrong, wrong. Let's go one step further. Yeah, you're interested in this question of stealing from the thief. That's a big issue, which I was hoping to just gloss over, but I can't. The truth is that the poskim speak endlessly about this question of a victim of thievery doing justice for himself, the victim of thievery doing justice for himself by stealing back what was stolen from him. This is a big subject which is discussed at great length by the poskim. The opinion of Safer Hasidim, which we just saw on the previous screen, does not necessarily represent the mainstream thinking of the poskim. The reason I quoted the Safer Hasidim is not to indicate that the poskim approve of stealing from a thief. The reason I quoted that passage is to indicate the displeasure which the Sefer Hasidim finds in gambling for money. That's clear, even though the poskim might not agree about the conclusion of stealing from a thief. Yeah, only the original victim, of course. Right? Those who are lenient and permit stealing from the thief only permit the original victim from getting back his property or the value of his original property. Yes. Yeah, we can only steal back the original property that was stolen. I can only steal back the original property that was stolen from me or the value of that. Someone, according to the lenient opinion, which not all the poskim agree to, according to this opinion of the Sefer Hasidim, if someone steals from me $100, I could go into his house and seize property in the value of $100 and take it home with me. After all, going through the legal system, the courts might not always be practical, might not always be possible. Okay, let's go one step further. The Sefer Kuzari, written by Rav Yehuda Halevi, one of the all-time greats, 13th century Spain, says as follows: Lo yitachen ki b'mishak ha'ashkaki, slightly different pronunciation, slightly different spelling for the game of chess. Lo yitachen, it is not possible that regarding the game of chess, yinatzeh ha'chalash et ha'chazak, it's not possible for the weak player to beat the strong player. I am not going to beat a chess master. I am not going to beat a world champion in chess. The weaker player does not beat the stronger player in chess. There are games which depend entirely upon chance. The roulette wheel, there are plenty of games which depend entirely on chance, but chess doesn't. Chess has stronger players and weaker players. Ein medvarim al hatzlacha o lo mazal b'melchemet hashkaki. In chess competitions, no one talks about good luck and bad luck. Good luck and bad luck have nothing to do with chess competitions. Unlike in warfare, in battle between two princes, two neighboring kings go to war with each other in a battle. Well, who wins the battle, who loses the battle has a lot to do with luck. There are other elements involved, but luck is a big element in who's going to win the battle in warfare. Chess is different from warfare. Warfare, there are stronger armies and weaker armies. There are better strategists and worse strategists. But it's possible for the smaller army. It's possible for the strategist who's really not so wise in the ways of military strategy. It's possible for the weaker strategist to win if he has good luck. Luck has a lot to do with warfare. Not so with chess. Chess has very fixed rules, and the rules are well known to everyone who plays. Anyone who knows how to use the rules better, whoever knows how to play better, Yinatzech is going to win tamid, always. Lo yifached mipnei hashiba tiv'it shetera beinehem. The chess master has not the slightest fear that luck is going to play to the advantage of his opponent. Luck has nothing to do with it, and the chess master knows full well that if he's playing against me, an ordinary citizen, he knows he's going to win. Siba Mikrit, there are no random occurrences in chess. There are no random events which dictate the winner and loser in chess. Chess depends entirely on skill. It's the more skillful player who will win the game of chess. Now, there are other games where there's a mixture of skill and chance. The horse racers. At the horse races, the person who understands the horses and has studied the horses very carefully has a better chance of winning, but still, there's a lot of luck involved. So some games, like roulette, depend only on luck. Other games, like blackjack, depend partially on luck and partially on the skill of the player. Some games, like chess, depend entirely upon skill. That is the idea of the Kuzari of Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. It follows, therefore, that if we're talking about a game which depends on skill, like chess, well, here we have a good game. A game having to do with chokhmah, a game having to do with improving your mind. Unlike a game like roulette, which is dependent only on chance, no intellect involved whatsoever, there is nothing to think about when you play roulette. It's entirely a matter of chance. Good games and bad games, according to the Kuzari, according to Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. Yeah. Poker. Look, in the annual poker championship, which takes place once a year in Las Vegas, it's usually the same players sitting around the table year after year. There's a reason why it's the same players sitting around the table year after year in the yearly world championship in poker in Las Vegas, because poker is a game which depends there's an element of chance, there is an element of randomness in it, but the game of poker depends in large measure on how well you understand the game and how well you can play. That's why the better players beat the weaker players in chess. Although there is an element of chance, it depends largely on your skill. Okay, the approach of Rav Yehuda Halevi is different from the approach of the poskim we've seen up till this point. Up till this point, the difference between good and bad had to do with whether or not you make your livelihood in a way that benefits mankind. And gambling does not benefit mankind at all. Kuzari has a different distinction between good and bad games. If it's purely chance, bad. If there's an element of chachma, an element of wisdom in it, good. Now let's point out that although people commonly say, I can't count the number of times I've heard people say that the New York Stock Exchange is the world's largest casino. Now it's true that there's an element of luck involved in investing in the stock market, whether it's the New York Stock Exchange or any other major stock exchange. It's true that there's an element of luck involved, but there's also a strong element of wisdom for people who understand what they're doing. And as far as the Rambam and the Safer Hasidim are concerned, these activities, investing in the stock market, is definitively and absolutely helping to improve civilization, helping to improve the world we live in. A company which wants to build a new factory and needs a lot of money to build a new factory to manufacture sweaters to keep the people warm, manufacturers which require money in order to benefit mankind by building a new factory, whatever it is they make, they have to raise the money somewhere, and the stock market is a good place to raise money. Someone who invests in the stock market is indeed improving mankind, assuming that the stocks you buy are stocks in corporations which do things which are beneficial to mankind. You might or might not like pharmaceutical firms, but the medicines they make do improve civilization, and therefore that surely investing in the stock market surely is excluded from the games of chance that the Mishnah frowns upon, according to the poskim which we've seen up till this point. Now, it's fine to survey the opinions of the great Rishonim, which we've just done, but of course, after doing that, we always want to see what the Shulchan Aruch has to say. Which of the approaches of the great Rishonim, which of the approaches of the medieval authorities is the approach which is embraced by the modern poskim, beginning with the Shulchan Aruch, coming down into modern times. Let's see what the Shulchan Aruch has to say about this. The Shulchan Aruch is talking in the context of Shabbat, and on Shabbat, ein sochakim be'egozim. You're not allowed to play with nuts on the floor. Back in those days, they didn't have marbles. You know, today you buy these little glass marbles. Children play with them. Back in those days, they didn't have glass marbles. What did children play with? They used to roll around nuts on the floor. Use nuts instead of marbles. Shulchan Aruch says you're not allowed to play with nuts on the floor, or in modern times, marbles will be the same. Lo b'tapuchim, the kayotze behem. Smaller children would use larger fruits to play with, like apples, easier to roll around for a smaller child. Mishum ashvuye gumos, because on Shabbos you're not allowed to smooth the earth. Plowing the earth is, of course, one of the 39 prohibited labors of Shabbos. Smoothing the earth, filling in the rut made by the plow, is equally one of the prohibitions of Shabbos. And since in those days the floor of the house was just dirt, our houses all have floors, we stand on floors, but in those days the floors of the houses were just dirt. Therefore, if you play marbles on the floor, you're going to be making ruts in the dirt, you're going to be smoothing the dirt over afterwards, and that's a prohibition of Shabbos. And therefore, the Ramah adds right away, Dafka al Gabe Karka. These games are prohibited only on the earth, where you're going to be making ruts in the ground and smoothing holes in the ground. You know, you're thinking about baseball, where the player hits the ball, slides into first base, and with his shoe is making a rut in the ground. That's exactly what we're talking about here as being prohibited on Shabbos, as if you're on the earth, if you're on the ground. Aval al gabe shulchan shari. If you play with marbles on the table, that's okay. You're not making ruts in the ground. There's no reason to prohibit playing with marbles on the table. Now you have to think about playing a football on a football field, which is not on the earth, but has astroturf, an artificial surface between the shoes of the players, between the boots of the players and the ground. If there's astroturf, then of course they're not going to be making ruts in the ground because the ground is protected. That's like playing on the table. Then the Shulchan Aruch goes on and says, "Mutar l'schok ba'atzamot shekorin jif." You're allowed to play with bones. I don't know exactly what this game was that they were playing with bones, but there's some game they're playing with bones in the Middle Ages. Af al pi shemashmiim kol ho'il ve'enum mechavdim l'shir. Even though when you play with the bones are going to strike each other and make sounds. Dice could be they're talking about dice. But these games are permitted. All these games are permitted as long as one is playing for tzchok, for fun. If you're playing for fun, fine. But if you're playing these games, right, dice were often made out of bones, and that could be very well what they're talking about. Playing for fun is fine, as long as you're not going to be making holes in the ground on Shabbos. If we're not playing on the ground, or it's not Shabbos, then playing for fun is fine, but playing for profit, if that's your livelihood, you're a professional gambler, asur. Afilu sochek betom v'chose tahave kemekach u'mimka. Playing for your livelihood is prohibited, and we know the sources for that idea. We've seen them on previous screens. In any event, bottom line, there's no reason to object to women or children. Well, it's not me who's the chauvinist in this particular case. It's medieval society which was chauvinist. Women belong with the children in the house. Women, of course, together with the children, have no enterprise, no engagement in industry, no engagement in anything outside of the house. Women and children whose lives are confined to the house, no reason to object to them playing games like this. Mutav shogim vayu muzaydin. Even if there's money involved, let them play. It's better that they play ignorant of the halachic problems involved, rather than telling them that there are halachic problems and they'll end up being mazed. This idea is a very important idea. Nowadays, I hope we don't have the same kind of chauvinist society which they had in the Middle Ages, and therefore the chauvinist element might not be interesting in modern times, but the underlying halachic idea is very important. The underlying halachic idea is mutav. It is better for someone to be a shogeg, an unknowing, unwitting, ignorant violator of halacha, than to be a rebellious, knowing that he or she is violating halacha. It's better. And therefore the rule is one should never tell someone that what he or she is doing is halachically prohibited, unless you have some reasonable expectation that they're going to listen to you. Telling someone that they're not allowed to keep their shop open on Shabbos, telling someone they're not allowed to eat pork, telling someone they're not allowed to do whatever the prohibition is, where there's no reasonable expectation that they're going to accept your words and correct their ways, you just run the risk of making them from mild sinners, not realizing how serious it is, into major sinners, doing the wrong thing, knowing how bad it is. It would have been better to remain silent. You know, back in those days, where the women were ignorant, where there was no such thing as women's education back in those days. Well, it's better to let them do things which are prohibited, where even if we tell them that it's prohibited, they're not going to listen to us, and they're going to continue doing the wrong thing. So the application might no longer be in the chauvinist realm, but there surely are plenty of other realms where the principle applies nowadays. Now, as far as the commentators on the Shulchan Aruch are concerned, these bones that they're playing with in the Shulchan Aruch, you on chat suggested that they're talking about chess, about dice, which might indeed be true. But the Magen Avraham says no. It's Shakaki, that word again. They were using the bones to carve chess pieces. They're playing chess. Nahagu la'asot Shakaki shel kesef the imloke nichse ke'uvdi zachol, and the reason that the Shulchan Aruch discourages playing with chess pieces made out of bone, which were the normal, relatively inexpensive chess sets in those days. The reason that the Shulchan Aruch discourages playing with ordinary bone chessmen on Shabbos is because that is uvde dechol, that makes it look like a weekday activity. And therefore, people who really like chess used to have silver chessmen, a silver set made specially for use on Shabbos. Now, of course, you don't need silver, but the idea of the Magen Avraham is to have a weekday set of chess and a Shabbos set of chess, so that when you play on Shabbos, you're clearly not engaging in a weekday activity. It's now become a Shabbos activity, and that's better for the spirit of Shabbos. Now, not all the poskim agree with the Magen Avraham. Not everyone agrees that you need a special chess set to play on Shabbos, but everyone agrees that there's no objection to playing chess on Shabbos or during the week. Everyone agrees that it's okay to play. The only disagreement here is whether when you come to play on Shabbos, you should have a special chess set only for Shabbos. The same could be said of bridge or any card game. These poskim, the stricter ones, have no objection to playing during the week, no objection to playing on Shabbos, but the stricter poskim say if you want to play on Shabbos, you should have a special deck of cards, which you use for Shabbos. That's the stricter view quoted by the Magen Avraham, probably the greatest commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. If Aram Sasson Cholek, one of the Rishonim, disagrees, Usvirale, and thinks, Kevan she'ein to'elet b'yidat chochmat ha'ishkoki, one of the great Rishonim thinks that since chess has no useful benefit in this world, and it's only frivolous, therefore it's prohibited. The opinion exists, a unique opinion of one of the Rishonim, that since chess is empty, devoid of any cleverness, empty of wisdom, that it's simply useless and therefore prohibited. Imken, hu hadin b'chol minei schok, it would follow, therefore, that this same Rabbi Sasson would have to prohibit all games. But of course, in those places, just about everywhere in the world, as far as I know, in those places where the lenient opinion is being followed, not the opinion of Rabbi Sasson, that lenient opinion gets the approval of the Magen Avraham, obviously gets the approval of the Magen Avraham because it's the opinion of all of the poskim except for this Rabbi Sasson. Bottom line, playing chess or any other game during the week is surely okay. Playing on Shabbos is surely okay. Some posts can say you should have a special set made out of silver or a nicer set for Shabbos. If you want to be machmir, that's the way to go. Have a special chess set for Shabbos. Okay, let's go one step further. We have now the opinion of the Minchas Yitzchak. The Minchas Yitzchak was Rav Yitzchak Weiss. Before the Holocaust, he was a Rav in Hungary, Grossvardain or Kleinvardain. I always get those towns confused. He was in one of those Vardain towns in Hungary. He survived. The Holocaust ended up in Manchester after the war, where he was a dayan. In the 1960s, he came to Eretz Yisrael, where he was appointed the head of the Eidah Haredit in Mea Sha'arim, here in Yerushalayim, reaching the very pinnacle of the rabbinic world, the pinnacle of the Haredi rabbinic world. You can't get any higher than that. These are his words. Nearly b'pshitus, it seems obvious to me, he says, it seems obvious to me that what the Magen Avram meant when he said we shouldn't object to people who are following the majority opinion and playing chess, the only reason he gave his approval to the lenient opinion is because he knew that if he told people it's prohibited to play games, no one's going to listen to him. They're going to continue playing games, and it's better not to tell people that what they're doing is wrong if they're not going to listen to you. Aval b'vadai, he surely thought, Ein bazeh heter la'holchim b'Torah Hashem. The Magen Avram surely thought that anyone who's going in the Torah way should not play chess or any other game ever. Someone who's going in the way of Torah should never play any games, period. Anyone who wants to go in the way of Torah should engage in Torah 100% day and night and nothing else. Af b'chol, even during the week. Yesh ladun harbe bazeh. Even during the week, we should give careful consideration to this issue, as is made clear in the Reishis Chochmah. Rav Cordovero, one of the great mystics of Tzfat, made this clear. This is what he said: the Chlal Kadzo, among the worst group of Jews, Jews who play dice or any other game are the worst. They are the worst group of Jews anywhere. Even if they're not playing for money, even if they're just playing for fun, even if no money is going to exchange hands. It's thievery, even if no money exchanges hands. What the two people, two guys, and back in those days, the idea of women playing was not thinkable. The two guys who get together and they're playing chess, what they should be doing is learning Gemara together. They should have a chavrusa. They shouldn't be wasting their time learning. They shouldn't be wasting their time playing chess or any other game. Well, that's pretty strict. Some people permit themselves to play games. They say it's mechaded haseichel. Some people say you're allowed to play chess. It sharpens the mind. Mechaded haseichel. Some people say playing chess sharpens the mind and it's an improvement in chachma. There's some people who say that. That's what the Rambam said. I mean, that's what the great Rishonim said. Ra'iti legalot ta'otam. But I wish to reveal the error in their thinking. Those like the Rambam, who said that certain games improve the mind. I shall now reveal the error of their thinking, their mistake. I will reveal the error of their thinking so that no one should make the mistake of playing any game thinking that it's somehow going to improve him, somehow thinking that it's going to improve her. These games which people say improve the mind, they're talking about things like chess. Everyone says that about chess. They say that playing chess improves the mind. But it's simply not true. Playing chess does not improve the mind. It's just frivolous. It's just a waste of time and therefore prohibited during the week. All the more so on Shabbos. All the more so on Yom Tov, the special days, Shabbos and Yom Tov, which were given to us for Torah and nothing else. Okay, so if the question is there a major posek out there? Is there a major rabbi in modern times who simply prohibits, flat out, all games? Is there such an opinion? Yes, indeed there is. It's Minchas Yitzchak, whom we have just seen. He holds that there is no benefit to any game whatsoever, period. They are all frivolous. They are all waste of time. Anyone who engages himself, anyone who engages herself in any game should be doing Torah and mitzvahs during that time, and it's wrong to play it again. All the more so on Shabbos and Yom Tov, days which should be devoted entirely to Torah, not even one's livelihood. Right, during the week, you can engage in your livelihood, even though it's not Torah and mitzvahs. Your livelihood is permitted during the week, but on Shabbos and Yom Tov, not even that is permitted. Only Torah and mitzvahs on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So some strict opinion surely exists, but as we have seen, it's the lenient opinion which predominates among all of the poskim outside of this small area, this small contingent. Let's see the way other poskim distinguish between the good games and the bad games. The Shilta Giborim quotes the Riaz, one of the great poskim from early modernity. Nashima Mesachakot, the Egozim Tapuchim, women who play games, nuts and apples. I don't know exactly what games they were playing. Hareza Asur, Shema Yavo Lahachlik Karka V'Hashvot Gumot. Women who play games are prohibited on Shabbos because they will be making ruts in the ground and smoothing the earth. Back in those days, when the floor of the house was just dirt. And if the women play for money, it's prohibited during the week as well, because that is similar to dice. Again, the games which are for profit, that's your livelihood. That's how you're going to be making money. That's no good to you. One's livelihood should not be based on games of chance. That does not improve civilization, does not improve mankind. One's livelihood, parnasa, should be dependent upon an activity which improves the quality of life on this planet, whether you're a plumber or an investment banker. On the other hand, certain games have an element of chokhmah, have an element of wisdom in them. Some games do not depend at all on luck. Unlike dice, where you win or lose entirely depending upon your luck, some games depend upon how clever you are. According to this, chess would also be prohibited if we're going to prohibit all games. And now he comes to his opinion. When can prove now I'm going to prove to you that any game which depends upon cleverness, like chess, there are better players and worse players. Ein bo mishum hatalat chalashim, has nothing to do with games of chance, has nothing to do with the prohibition of dice, Mutar l'schok b'Shabbos, you can play any game, even on Shabbos, as long as it's not a game of pure chance. Kol she'eno schok mamon, as long as he's not making money on Shabbos. Lo dami l'kubiya sheyesh bo isur afilu schok b'chinam b'Shabbos. Okay, bottom line, his opinion is as follows. If it's a game purely of chance, no good. No benefit at all. To mankind, shouldn't play that. If it's a game which depends upon wisdom, that's fine, except on Shabbos, one should not play it if there's money involved. These are the principal opinions regarding games during the week and on Shabbos. With this, we come to the end of our series on having fun. In the next semester, I am going to be giving 2 classes, one on astrology, what the poskim, what the great rabbis have to say about astrology, and one series of classes dealing with charity, how to decide whom to give your money to, who is the best recipient of charity, and I will be focusing on the question of giving charity to people where you don't know whether they are legitimately poor or maybe frauds. We'll be dealing with who to give the money to in charitable situations in the next semester. That's one class. My other class will be dealing with astrology. Until then, I wish you a good week and a good Shabbos, and look forward to seeing you all again in the next semester of the Web Yeshiva. Until then, shalom, shalom.